Hello and welcome back to the Matrix Green Pill podcast. I'm your host, Hilmarie Hutchison, and today's guest is someone who's redefining how we heal from stress and trauma by reconnecting with our body. Richmond Heath is the founder of TRE Australia and a global leader in tension and trauma releasing exercises, or TRE. With a background in physiotherapy and mental health, Richmond has helped thousands of people tap into the body's natural healing reflex to release chronic tension, build resilience, and calm the nervous system. He's worked with everyone from earthquake survivors and elite athletes to corporate teams and everyday people seeking relief from stress. His mission is clear: to make healing more accessible and more transformative. Richmond, welcome and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks very much for having me on, Hilmarie.
So let's start with your background. Can you tell us about your journey? What was the dream growing up?
As a little child, a key moment for me was around the age of 7 or 8. My father used to watch a lot of the news on TV, and at some point I got old enough to be able to understand what I was watching on the news. And I had this moment as a young child where I couldn't understand why there was all this fighting and wars in the world, which was, the news was full of on the TV. And I had this crazy idea as a young child. I wish I had have done it because it probably would have been effective when I was 7 years old, where I went into the bedroom and I sat at my brother's desk that had a world map on the desk. And my idea was that I was going to write a letter to all the presidents and prime ministers of all the countries in the world and invite them to our farm in Australia to come and sit down and all talk together and sort it all out so we all had to stop, so all the fighting would stop. I started writing the names of about the 2 or 3 presidents and prime ministers I knew, which were kind of, Australia, England and America. And then I remember looking at the world map and just being overwhelmed and daunted by, oh my God, all these countries and names I'd never heard of. And so I tucked the list into the drawer and I put up and I gave up on it basically. And the reason I share that story is that from that young age, I just had a natural desire to try to bring peace and harmony to people for my own well-being as much as anybody else. And it wasn't really until years 20, 35 or something years later when I got introduced to TRE that I sort of realised that I had a process that I had access to which could actually help contribute to that goal in a very grounded and practical way, or as I like to say, moving towards world peace one body at a time.
That's incredible, and I love that you told that story. I don't think there's many 7 or 8-year-old kids who think that big picture, but you had that desire, as you said, to want to get the whole world together. Let's just sit down and talk. Let's figure this all out. It seems so simple, right? Doesn't it? You sometimes do wish, even as adults, that people could just talk it out and figure it out. But unfortunately, that is not the way of the world. You mentioned discovering something that was going to change the world, one body at a time. Can you tell us about that? What led you to where you are today?
Yeah, well, look, really, this was my green pill moment. And the context and the background was that in my early 30s, I had a young family and my body was beginning to break down. I had chronic shoulder pain that meant I couldn't swim anymore. I had chronic Achilles tendonitis, which meant I couldn't run anymore. And I'd had a number of periods of chronic low back pain in 2 episodes, Hilmarie, where I couldn't even walk up and down stairs because of the neurological weakness in my leg. As a physiotherapist, of course, I'd been told this was all just biomechanical tension, misalignment, muscular patterns. And I had no idea that I'd been living my entire life with high-functioning anxiety. All I knew was that my body was really starting to grind down and my life along with it. I remember actually calling one of my brothers and saying, hey, I can't do all the things I used to do to keep myself happy, which meant that because of all the injuries and the chronic pain I was experiencing, I couldn't exercise and play sport, which was my go-to for maintaining my mental health and well-being. And then I was fortunate enough to be given a TRE DVD by a friend of mine who was a chiropractor. He said, check this out, it's really cool. So I put the DVD in the computer. I followed along. I did a few simple exercises. I had this tiny little vibration in my inner thighs, like almost imperceptible, just my skin sort of vibrating, and I didn't think much of it. I went to bed that night, and overnight something happened, which, as I say, was my green pill moment, where I woke up in the morning and I had slept like a log in a way that I hadn't slept for 20 or 30 years since I was a young child. And I remember getting up in the morning, Hilmarie, and going and sitting on the toilet. And for the last 5 or 10 years, whenever I would sit down in the mornings, my heels would be up off the ground. Not because I couldn't put them down, but that was just the tension pattern in my body, was that, my heels would lift up. And this is a common pattern that we see in people who are neurodiversity or autism, this sort of stress pattern of lifting up. And I'll never forget sitting on the toilet in the morning just thinking, oh my God, what has happened? Because my heels were heavy and relaxed on the floor, and that letting go of the tension, it felt like my feet were like a foot through the floor. It was just an extraordinary embodied experience where in that moment I knew that whatever I'd done the night before with this little shaking thing had relaxed my mind and my body in a way that nothing else had ever done. And I had tried meditation. I'd tried every treatment you could think of, counseling, talk therapy, mindfulness, just the works. I'd done it all. And so at that point, I had no idea how to understand what had happened. All I knew was that I had this completely undeniable transformation in my physical body. It was literally like I woke up with a different body that morning. And so from there, I was instantly hooked because of the changes that I made. I've spent the last 15 years of my life exploring that and dedicating myself to sharing that with others.
That's incredible. As you say, when your body starts slowing down or seizing up on you, then the things that help you with your mental health, the sport, the physical activity, which is what's releasing the dopamine and helping us to cope with stress and with all the pressures that we have, when you can no longer do that, now it's not only your body, but also your mental health that is taking a knock. And it's incredible that from one session, you immediately had that kind of impact, such a huge impact from just one session, which I think you're probably very fortunate, or maybe this is normal, so we're going to find out. So for our listeners who are new to TRE, what exactly is it? Can you sort of unpack that for us?
So in a nutshell, it's a process whereby we reframe spontaneous shaking and trembling in the body as a positive resource in the body. So everyone on the planet has either experienced or seen someone's hand shaking while we're public speaking, and we just think, oh, that's anxiety. Or if you've ever had a car accident or a major fright or a shock and our body starts to shake and tremble, and we've all just been told that that's shock. And in a nutshell, what TRE does, which TRE standing for tension and trauma release exercises, is it reframes this because it's blatantly obvious that if I'm standing still and I'm shaking and trembling, that is not helping my body to fight or to flee. So the shaking and the trembling, it's not so much caused by adrenaline. When we get that big adrenaline spike because of a shock or a trauma, the shaking and the trembling is the way the body calms itself down, literally uses up the adrenaline by creating this very efficient shaking reflex, down regulating the autonomic nervous system and effectively shaking us back to a calm, relaxed place. So the simple reframe that everyone needs to understand is that when we're having this shaking and tremoring response, it's not a part of being anxious. It's not a part of shock. It's not a panic attack. The shaking and the trembling is the way that the body recovers from it. And in the same way that our stress and trauma responses are completely unconscious, none of us are choosing to have tight shoulders or a crunched up and rigid and bound up digestive system. All of those responses are happening unconsciously. And the beauty of accessing this shaking reflex is it's generated by the same part of the brain and the spine and the nervous system in that unconscious sense. It's something that all mammals and humans have evolved with, and it's this natural resource that in the Western world at least, we've completely misunderstood, overlooked, and pathologized it. We think if we're shaking, that's a sign of anxiety or shock, or that it's PTSD, or sadly, we'll think I'm having a panic attack. And so TRE is just a way of reframing that through a neuroscientific, trauma-informed lens, and then teaching people how they can deliberately access this shaking reflex and then use it on their own whenever and wherever they need to for the rest of their life.
That's incredible. So it does make sense because, as you say, you always see people trembling or shaking after a very traumatic experience. And as you say, we sort of think, well, that's part of the experience. But actually, it is the body's coping mechanism to release the tension and the trauma that the body is going through. So through that exercise that you did that evening, you then tapped into the body's ability to release this tension. And so we can learn to do this intentionally. I'm really looking forward to hearing more about how we do that.
As you say, TRE was developed by a guy called David Berceli, and he wasn't the first person in the world to make use of this trembling response because it's something, Hilmarie, that traditional cultures around the world have been using for thousands of years. A few examples. The Kalahari Bushmen, part of their key cultural identity is they call themselves the keepers of the shake. And they deliberately use this for, individual and community well-being and spirituality. Traditional Swahili midwives deliberately keep women standing up after giving birth to ensure that their body shakes and trembles and goes through its full complete discharge, sometimes for up to half an hour of shaking after birth, because they know if they don't let the body do that, the woman will end up with problems and difficulties afterwards. Even the ancient samurai warriors practiced a secret martial art called seikijutsu, where they would meditate into a state of surrender and allowing where their body would start to shake and tremble and move itself back to a calm, relaxed state. And it was part of their key training processes that let them be Zen, the ultimate warriors one moment and then chilled out Zen masters the next. And so David Berceli was an American guy who was seen shaking and trembling in war zones and third world countries after natural disasters. And he had his own aha moment, recognizing that the trembling was not part of the stress or trauma response, but a recovery response, and therefore put together a few simple exercises to physically connect with the tremor. And one of the key things about TRE is we bypass the thinking mind by accessing this tremor mechanism purely using muscle fatigue and load. The same as anyone who's ever been at the gym and you've been lifting weights or you've been holding a yoga pose and you feel your body start to shake and tremble. So by working that process through the body, we can bypass the cognitive thinking mind, which is not where our stress and unresolved trauma patterns are generated. And so it also means we can help people and empower people with the ability to resolve stress and trauma at a somatic level in their body without necessarily having to think about it or talk about it or recount the past or stories that they prefer to forget.
It's amazing how we can look at traditional cultures where there's no science that they know about, but intuitively they have developed these skills to tap into the shaking mechanism to release stress and tension and trauma from the body. So it's not a new thing. Clearly, it's something that has already been there for thousands of years. I know that one of your passions is to make TRE accessible to the whole world. You speak of it doing healing the world one body at a time, as you mentioned earlier. What barriers do people usually face when it comes to trauma or stress recovery?
One of the key things is at the moment, the Western therapeutic talk-based, psychotherapeutic talk model is taking over, certainly the Western world, of saying that we can only heal through therapy. Part of what drew me to TRE and David Berceli was this idea that we can empower people in their own healing. It's not to discount the value of therapy where it's available, but after the tsunami back in the early 2000s, we can't send in 5,000 psychologists to do 12 sessions with 500,000 people who've been affected by trauma. That therapeutic model, while it does have some value, is one of the most limiting factors because the scientific approach is this is the only thing that's researched. And even though we know that our existing evidence-based practices are not effective in helping resolve PTSD, there are a third of people who get no benefit from them whatsoever, another third who get some benefit but do not heal, and they're only effective in about a third of the cases. And so when it comes to TRE, one of the barriers, which is generally pretty easily overcome, is the stigmatization of shaking and trembling, and that people think that that's a sign of weakness or vulnerability or fear or shock or overwhelm. And that's the beauty of where in TRE we will use, a neuroscientific model of the autonomic nervous system or the polyvagal theory to show people how the restoration of this shaking and tremoring response is the body's natural recovery response. And once people have that reframe, it's actually then becomes very simple and easy. And as I say, the beauty is once you learn to access this natural process inside you, you can then use it on your own for free for the rest of your life. So my job and our job is really just to introduce it to you and empower you with the skills to regulate it and integrate it into your life so you're not then dependent on me for your ongoing healing and recovery and well-being.
Yes, so it's once you get past the stigma and people misunderstanding what the body's signals are, then people are more open to trying it out and applying it and then seeing the benefits. You've worked in many different settings, disaster recovery, elite sports people, mental health spaces. How does TRE adapt across these contexts?
So it's surprisingly effective in all those different contexts because at the end of the day, we've all got the same human organism, within our own individual variations and differences. And so it doesn't really matter whether people are coming to the process wanting to improve their sports recovery or sleep better or improve their heart rate variability or maybe even improve their performance at work by entraining flow states, which tends to get brought on when we go into the tremoring. Or whether we've got someone who's had an acute trauma, they've just been through a bushfire or they've just lost someone and are in a deep process of grief. At the foundations, the human organism has an innate desire to optimize its function and well-being. And so when we tap into this tremor reflex, the process is always going to be very much similar to each person, although their own individual body will determine how, where, and how much their body tremors. So the process is led by the body rather than by our ego or our conscious mind. And it's going to have the effect of reducing stress and tension in the physical structure of the body. And so then that effect will then flow on and have the benefits that will have an impact in people's life regardless of their original intention in coming to use the process.
That's interesting. As you said, the process is led by the body. So each person has their own unique experience of how it affects them. You've said that TRE is about more than just stress release. What are some of the deeper benefits you've seen in people who practice it consistently?
Yeah, you're right there, Hilmarie, because even though most of us only experience shaking and tremoring in the context of stress, a release or trauma recovery or in periods of shock, it's critical that we understand that all of our bodies spontaneously shake and tremble for basically 9 months in utero. Even before the central nervous system is connected to the muscles and the periphery of the body itself generates the twitching and the spontaneous movements, and it's the foundational way that our movement patterns are generated and from that our conscious awareness actually grows from. While most people come to TRE thinking, I just want to get rid of the stress and trauma and they're focused on releasing the past, very quickly people start to recognize that it's also helping to reorganize and optimize their system to help them move into the future. So common things that we'll see is that people notice they become more creative. They gradually over time, as they become more grounded and more present, embodied and connected to themselves, the flow-on effect is they notice, and we notice this as providers, we see the development of what I like to call physiological maturity, which basically means not that we're behaving more maturely, but our nervous system is becoming more safe and solid and grounded. So that over time, as the nervous system down-regulates itself through this shaking and tremoring reflex, we become more grounded and more centered. We become calmer. We become more empowered. And this generally ends up in us becoming much more authentic in who we are and how we live our lives, which then flows on to deepening and bringing us into much more authentic relationship, not only with ourselves and other people, but also with the environment and the world around us.
I love that. And I can sense that in you, this deep calmness in you that probably because of, as you said, the deeper healing and the deeper benefits of using TRE. I love how you said that it's not just for the trauma or the anxious state at that point, but it's giving you that more grounded, centered, calm feeling. You speak about practitioners, you speak about teaching people. To make it practical for our audience, where can they learn this? Who do they go to? Is it done remotely? Is it done in person? How long does it take? Can you give us a little bit more specific details about how TRE gets taught?
So over the last 20 odd years, TRE spread to more than 80 countries around the world, and there are TRE providers pretty much everywhere. And also you can also learn the process online through a Zoom call. So if there are listeners out there who feel nervous about doing the process or shaking, if they've got a history of mental health, some major physical injury or, medical condition, or maybe they've got a history of extreme trauma, if people don't feel comfortable, then you can always learn TRE with a TRE provider, and you can find them all around the world via the website treglobal.com. But during COVID, Hilmarie, one of the positives that came out of COVID is we started to realize that we could teach this very effectively online through Zoom sessions, live, one-on-one. But also during COVID, I developed at the time the world's first online TRE course. And it's had 14,000 people go through it with almost no complaints about safety or overwhelm or anything like that, because it has a screening tool. And so what that's proven is the vast majority of people are able to learn TRE through a simple self-guided online course. And that course, has a bit of background, a bit of theory, and then it has 3 guided sessions. So if listeners are wanting to explore it, the first few, lectures are free, so you can go and have a look at it and work it out. That course is at trecourse.com. And if you like online learning, then that is the most efficient and effective way to learn it. And why I'm so passionate about that is, for the cost of less than a single therapy session, you can do these 3 guided sessions, and then you've got all you need to know to start using this process on your own for the rest of your life.
That's amazing. I absolutely love that, because as you said, if you think back at your experience, there was no person with you. You were given something to listen to, something to try it, and it had such a profound effect on you. And this is not a money-making thing. You've got to go and see a therapist every week for 3 sessions a week. I love that it's accessible to everybody, that anyone can do it online. And as you say, for the cost of less than a regular therapy session, you can gain these skills, these tools that can change your life as it did for you. I love that. And we will also put a link, by the way, to this in the show notes. For someone feeling overwhelmed, anxious, or stuck, what is one simple first step that they can take toward body-based healing?
My recommendation would be to learn TRE and sign up to that online course. They can get the reframing, because it's one thing to hear the podcast and say, okay, I understand, that makes sense. When my body's shaking, that means it's over. If my body's shaking, that means I'm safe. But if I've experienced the shaking in the context of stress and trauma for 30 or 40 years, if my entire culture is telling me that's a symptom of vulnerability and weakness and shock, and in fact, if my whole medical model is telling me that it's a symptom of anxiety and panic attacks and PTSD, then it's one thing to understand intellectually that the shaking is actually a positive and safe resource. And it's another thing entirely to experience it and have that experience in the body. And one of the favorite things I love about TRE, Hilmarie, is that people learn how to self-regulate the tremoring. So we lie down, you use a simple exercise to fatigue the muscles, the body starts to shake, and then we take the muscles offload and the body stops shaking. So very quickly, rather than being scared of the shaking, we have the experience that we can surrender and allow it to move us. But then as soon as we want to, we can take conscious control of it again. And so having that initial experience through TRE completely changes and transforms. That's a green pill moment for everybody, where all of a sudden that thing that we've been scared of and tried to shut down in the body, all of a sudden it flips 180 degrees and it's something that feels good, and we begin to want to welcome that in the body. So one thing is, if your body's shaking, I could say, let it shake, feel safe, just know that it's a positive recovery resource, but realistically, when we've got years of pathologizing it, stigmatizing and being frightened of shaking, the most significant thing I would suggest for people for body-based healing is to experience this shaking and trembling reflex. Now, TRE is only one modality. There's lots of other modalities, but from my perspective, it's one of the most efficient and empowering modalities there is. So yeah, I would recommend people go and check out the online course at trecourse.com. Again, you can watch a few lectures, and if you don't feel comfortable and safe to do it on your own, then you can find a TRE provider who can teach you how to use it in a safe and controlled way.
But you have to actually experience it, actually try it before you will realize the benefit of doing it. You've mentioned the importance of TRE for men in particular. Why is that, and how does TRE help men reconnect with themselves?
So there's a few different angles. One is that the process is not just focused on stress release or trauma recovery. Because it's being used by elite athletes, like in Australia, we have Olympians, Olympic medalists, AFL footballers, professional surfers. It's also being used by elite soldiers in the US. So it's a stigma-free process, which is very much focused on improving performance. And for most men, especially high-functioning men, they're not really interested in reducing stress or recovering from trauma. All they really want to be able to do is to improve their job. And often it's a job of service, first responders. If they have to be traumatized to be a better firefighter, they will do it. So shifting the focus on how this will improve their sleep, their recovery, their HRV, their heart rate variability, their decision-making under pressure, their recovery times, so they can do more of their job, is an incredibly attractive and empowering process that's got a positive bent rather than it being sort of therapeutic. And of course, the other key benefit around the benefits for men is it doesn't require them to think or talk about the past or talk about their emotions. And as much as there's a focus on emotions in the current sort of Western paradigm, if we spend our time talking about our emotions, we can end up in 15 years of therapy and never actually heal. It's not that talking itself is not useful, but when we don't include the somatic physical release in the body, then really all that's happening is we're loosening up our jaw and our body continues to carry those patterns. So providing men with a technique that they can do on their own, or they can do it in a group, lying on the floor, laughing and talking. They don't have to be in some meditative, serious space. It's an incredibly attractive process that is, because the body generates the movements, it's efficient and it's easy, and it doesn't take any mental focus or physical effort when we're most tired and fatigued at the end of a long shift. If you've been at work all day on the computer, the last thing you want to do is focus your mind because you've been focusing for 8 hours. Or if you've just finished a shift fighting a bushfire, you don't want to go to the gym or do yoga or Pilates because you're exhausted. But this process, you can lie down in your bed and let the body generate the movements itself, and the only thing we need to do is relax and get out of the way.
And the not needing to do the talking angle, I can see that being appealing to men and actually having that physical experience instead. What's next for you and TRE Australia? Are there any new programs, collaborations, or expansion plans coming up?
Yeah, well, look, just tonight, a couple of hours ago, I recorded the 12th guided session of an advanced online course that I've been creating over the last 3 months. So that's really the next big thing that's going to come out for me. And I'm incredibly proud of it because even, it's 30-minute guided sessions that also have a little bit of theory behind each one that really helps people expand their experience of TRE and take the process much deeper into the body so they're having much more significant impacts. And that's really the culmination, as I say, even though it's 12 30-minute sessions, it's the culmination of just about everything I've learned over the last 15 to 20 years. And so that will be coming out before Christmas 2025. So I recommend people, start with the basic online course, get started, use that for a while. And then when you're ready to deepen the process, you're going to be able to access very cost effectively these 12 guided sessions, which will really have a significant impact on your personal practice that will then flow over into enhancing your well-being and your life.
It's incredible, right? Where it started, that one session that you did, the impact it had, and where it's led you, where you have been able to impact so many people, as you said, with the first online course and now into this bigger course, this advanced online course that you are working on. It's incredible how that one thing, that one experience has impacted the whole of your life. And then you have gifted that experience to so many people who would never even have heard about it. I appreciate that you have dedicated your life to helping people tap into the body's tremor reflex. It's brilliant.
Yeah, thanks, Hilmarie. It's a vocation, it's a calling, it's a passion. To be honest, it's an absolute joy because being able to reframe, someone's paradigm and then provide them with a process which, there can be life changing transformations happen in a single session. People who, it's not uncommon at a workshop at the end of a tremor session, someone might be sitting on the floor and we'll ask people what they experienced. Sometimes people say, look, I haven't been able to sit cross-legged on the floor for 30 years and I can sit here without pain and complete comfort. When we understand the way the tremor reflex is able to switch off our protective, habitual trauma, stress, tension, defensive responses, it's an absolute pleasure and a joy and a privilege to be able to reconnect people with this process and this resource which is already inside them, and then to be able to empower them with that so they can take that away for the rest of their life. So it's a privilege, a joy and an honor and a passion to be able to share this with more and more people around the world.
Yeah, I can imagine it must be so rewarding to see the impact that this has on people's lives. Now we have come to the segment of our show where I will ask you some rapid fire questions, our version of a game show. Are you ready?
I am. Fire away.
Body or mind? Which comes first in healing?
The body.
What's your go-to reset? Nature, movement, or meditation?
Spontaneous movement, not just me moving, but neurogenic movement.
A book or teacher that radically shifted how you think about wellness?
Shaking Medicine by Bradford Keeney.
One word that describes your mission?
Peace.
What does well-being mean to you?
It means having peace within inside myself, harmony in my relationship with others, and joy and vitality at the experience of being alive in a human body.
What is one thing you do every day, no matter how busy you get?
Move, whether that's through Pilates or yoga or TRE.
Excellent. Well, thank you for playing along. That was easy enough. Now I would like to ask you our signature green pill question. I'm wondering if you've already answered this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Could you share an inspiring or life-changing experience that you have gone through, your green pill moment?
Yeah, so this predated my first experience of TRE by about 7 or 8 years, where I was attending my third Vipassana meditation retreat, which is a 10-day silent meditation retreat where basically we just meditate into the sensations in the body. And on this third retreat, at some point, it got to the stage where my mind had slowed down enough that as I was sitting there on the meditation cushion, I noticed my body started to lean forwards. And in that moment, it really hit me that I wasn't doing that movement. And at that stage, I just kept observing my body. I sort of, that was the process, was to observe. And as my body started to lean forwards, just as I thought I was going to fall over, it sort of jolted and then it slowly started to move backwards. And so I kept meditating and watching my body and allowing my body to move. And the real turning point, Hilmarie, was that I snuck back into the meditation hall late at night, about 10 or 11 o'clock when everyone had gone to bed, because in that meditation tradition, you're not meant to move. And my body was moving, so I didn't want to distract others or go against the teaching. So I snuck back into the hall and I just started to sense into my body, and my body began to spin around and stretch and move and open me up in ways that just felt extraordinarily ecstatic and incredible. And that was really the turning point where for the first time in my life, I had a process I could use that could release the stress and tension that had been carrying in my body in a healthy way that also felt incredibly pleasurable and ecstatic. That was really the key turning point, and it was only 6 or 7 years later when I got introduced to TRE that I then had a model for what was happening, but that was the moment when I like to describe it as finally I had found the emergency exit for all the stress, tension and trauma that had been carried and contained in my body that I'd only ever been able to sort of mask by overeating food or distracting myself with TV and other sort of addictive behaviours. So that was really the turning point, literally when my body started to move on its own and I just sat there and observed it.
That's incredible. Well, thank you so much for sharing that experience with us, and thank you for being here today. I've learned a lot. I am excited to go and check out the online course to see how to apply it. Your work with TRE is such a powerful reminder that healing doesn't have to be complicated. The body already knows what to do. We just have to let it. Before we wrap up, where can our listeners go to access your free online TRE course or find upcoming workshops?
Yeah, so the online course is at trecourse.com, and that's got a 3-tier payment system so that people can choose an appropriate payment system according to their income, or if someone's in extreme financial need, they can apply for free access. And then more information about me and around TRE, you can also find at the website treaustralia.com, or if you're looking for a TRE provider or workshops, you can find that at treglobal.com. And finally, if you're a practitioner, there is TRE training all around the world. And I also offer a 12-week online course for movement, exercise, and body-based therapists who can then learn how to integrate TRE into their existing qualifications. So to find me there, just look up treaustralia.com. But the real starting place is begin with experiencing it in your body by learning it at the online course at trecourse.com.
Super. Thank you very much for that. And to our listeners, thank you for joining another inspiring episode of the Matrix Green Pill podcast. If this conversation helped you see stress or healing in a new way, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. It really helps us grow the community. Until next time, be kind to your body and trust its wisdom.
If you enjoy our conversations, please like and subscribe. See you next Wednesday.